back. Here we go. The return of the review. It's been a minute, been caught up and doing some things, but a pretty busy end to 2021. Here we are, 2022, and I'm wearing a hoodie on the review because this room's actually a little bit cold right now and I don't feel like turning on the heat. Speaking of turning up the heat, Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix now. Let's talk about it. A lot of horror fans out there. I'm a pretty big fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, although no point in the series. I know a lot of people point to the 2003 remake, I believe. Some people consider it better than the original. It's a really good movie, but having watched both of them kind of side by side or back to back at various points, I still think the original comes close to kind of possibly the best on camera, just visceral horror, the whole scene at dinner at the end. Anyway, moral of the story is they've been remaking these, sequelizing these forever. You have the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which I want to call the Chainsaws family because of the cover. You have the Next Generation with very young Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger, pre-Oscars, obviously. The remake sequel. You have Texas Chainsaw 3D, which I saw in theater, and though being a pretty weak movie, man, in 3D, that was a great time. Then you also have kind of a forgotten one called Leatherface that was kind of like an origin type story. Good performance in there by Vanessa DeGrasse as well. Now you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a direct sequel to the original. You're seeing this a lot now in horror. The Halloween franchise, obviously an inspiration for this one, having just ignored all the sequels, and they jump right in to the whole bloodshed and everything tied to the original. So let's talk about this one. Your plot is essentially a group of 20-somethings, I guess, maybe early 30-somethings, probably 20-somethings, have been involved in a retail brokerage of the town of Harlow, which is where the Texas Chainsaw Massacre took place. And there's all these old facilities and buildings there that have kind of been abandoned. And they're looking to profit from this by arranging a group sale to some, I guess, wide-eyed tourists or historians or creeps, whatever, people that are into buying this town. They show up and there's still a couple of people there. Within 10-15 minutes after that, there's a chainsaw and people are getting hacked. Let's talk the good before I descend into fiery brimstone on this movie. So the good, if you want gore and you just want to see chainsaw action, listen, you're going to get your fix. There is a lot to like here. Body parts being strewn about, blood shooting everywhere, fair bit of practical, and that's it. The problem with this movie, right off the start, the first 15-20 minutes of this movie are extremely uninteresting. Extremely uninteresting. The characters they introduce you to, there's this thing in horror where you have like this small window where you have to kind of connect some sort of care to at least one of the main characters, because that's going to kind of carry you through, like, oh man, I didn't want that one to die, or oh, she made it, I like her, like whatever. You need to connect some sort of care. These people are written very badly, and if I'm being honest, they're not acted very well either. I'm sure the actors were trying. I don't want to come down too hard on them, but there's some really bad lines and delivery in this movie. There's one part, well, I'm gonna hear, I wrote it down. After this like intense part, this is actual dialogue exchange. So there's more or less just been like some horrible things happening. One sister walks out of the place and the other sister says, you know, this place is cursed. This place is cursed now. To which the other sister replies, I don't need this right now. To which she then replies, if you move here, I'm moving back with Dad. Like, I assume they had like a 20-second spot and were like, add character development. It's just really awkward. They also shoehorn in this subplot about one of them being a school shooting survivor, which could have been very interesting. I think maybe you could have opened up with some of that in the original intro and just kind of showed her processing this drama and maybe had some conversations with the people that she's traveling with about this to kind of heighten her as this heroine. But they essentially just sprinkle like a 10-second flashback twice in the movie. Then I guess we're supposed to kind of just connect the dots on our own that, this is about her rising up to defeat terror and fight the ultimate villain that she wasn't able to do when her friends were shot, et cetera, et cetera. Only none of that is really explained in the script because they know they don't have anything and they just have to get to the killing. Every part of this movie is kind of at war with itself. So on the one hand, it's trying to be true to the original film. They want to be horror and they want to be bloodshed and they want to be intense. But on the other hand, they're trying to modernize it. And this is where the problem comes in. The Halloween reboot didn't try to modernize it. Now, they tweaked things, they added some stuff, but they kept it Halloween. This film adds a lot of modern elements from the approached character development to one scene in particular where the adding of technology really messed up things. There's a part where Leatherface is killing people on a bus. Now, listen, I'm light spoilers. I'm not going to get into too much here. But there's about 15 or so people that are filming him and appear to be live streaming on their phones. The one guy has a couple of very poignant line deliveries, like, oh man, that's so 2022. But the problem with adding these modern elements and making them so front and center is that about 15, 20 minutes later, I have to ask myself, where the hell are the cops or the helicopters or anything? Because there was 15 people live streaming while they were getting slaughtered by a chainsaw. That seems like the type of thing that might have made it to some officers or some sort of law enforcement agency. The whole rest of the movie, I'm like, why is there no one showing up at this town? Like, there's a fairly good chunk of time. Apparently, the only person that can figure things out is, you've seen it in the trailers and stuff, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but the survivor from the original pops up into this movie, and that again is another issue with this where, and I can't help but compare them, but, obviously there's going to be fans of this film that defend it and choose it over the Halloween reboot, which is totally fine. Love what you love. But the Halloween reboot respected its original characters and grew them into the new plot so that you have new characters around them that then become stronger. This movie has pretty weak lead characters, adds a really interesting element by connecting it to the past, but then uses that element to do absolutely nothing for the new characters. The ending of this film is horrible, where they smash original and modern. So they essentially try to recreate the ending of the original, but with modern devices. And again, at this point, my whole brain just kept thinking, where are the officers? I couldn't get past it. At least in some modern horror films, like the phone doesn't work or the phone gets smashed or something. These people were live streaming mass murder. Like, there has to be somebody coming. Does Harlow exist outside of law enforcement? Are all officers dead or corrupt in this movie? I don't know. Like, nobody came for anybody. There had to be an ambulance that called somebody at the beginning of the movie. Their GPS located. Technology, it's hard to get through this movie being aware of how the world works right now. I think, if they wanted to do this, I think they just should have gone all in and tried to recreate some sort of period piece and maybe done a sequel set in the 80s after the events in the 70s film, something along those lines. And I've seen online, there's a lot of debate. There's a lot of people that love this film and are enjoying it. And there's also people that are just going to defend the crap out of it because they love Leatherface. Man, do it. But I think, when you strip a lot of the chainsaw fun away from this movie, I mean, it's bad. The top to bottom, this is probably I don't want to say one of the biggest disappointments because there's been films that have disappointed me way more. I went into this kind of expecting, not this, but like, I have one friend who left a very poignant review for this film, which I will cut to a screenshot. If I didn't have the ability to rate things with numbers, I would just sound strangely similar to the most annoying sound in the world on Dumb and Dumber, but you get me. Anyway, folks, Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix gets a whopping 4 out of 10 stars. This is a not very good film. If you want to watch it after a couple of beers, just watch people get hacked, fine. Don't hate yourself for fast forwarding, because there is no one to care about in this movie. There's a moment, honestly, okay, there's one moment towards the end where I felt a little bit, just because of how it was set up, how it was shot. It was kind of good, but then they immediately bookend that with, I guess, a chainsaw uppercut. I don't know. Like, as soon as you see, if you're a seasoned horror fan, as soon as you see that, you know where we're going. Like, not good. Netflix, do better. If you're going to buy these properties or buy films based on these properties, you really have something here where you could have just grown and made a film every couple of years and people would have been really excited. Hopefully they kind of get their bearings here, maybe do something really cool down the road with the franchise. But for now, skip it, folks. This is not worth your time. That's all I got.